Now recall that each of the trials of a binomial experiment must have two outcomes. Right? So let me call one of those outcomes success. Okay, so it's just a name that I just label one of the outcomes success. Right. So then the number of successes in a binomial experiment is a random variable. Okay. And that random variable is known as the binomial random variable. Now recall that for something to be a random variable, it has to be random and it has to have a probability distribution. Right? So let's look at our variable here. First off, the number of successes is random because before the experiment, we don't know how many successes we were gonna get, right? So before the experiment, the number of successes is unknown, right? So for example, let's go back to the example we did in the previous video. Right, so the student taking 4 classes example. Right. If I define success as passing a class, so if success is passing a class, then before the semester ends, we don't know how many classes the student will pass, right? And so is random. And then the second requirement is that it needs to have a probability distribution, right? And it turns out that the probability of each possible values of the number of successes can be computed. Okay. So the probability of each possible values of the number of successes can be computed. So it has a probability distribution. Okay, we will get back to this point in a little bit. Let's now talk about the possible values of a binomial random variable x. So possible values of a binomial random variable x. So suppose we have a binomial experiment with n trials. So binomial experiment with n trials, and let x denote the number of successes. Then the possible values of x are going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way to n. So in the context of the example we looked at in the previous video, the student may pass none of the 4 classes, right? So x can be 0. He or she can pass 1 class, 2 classes, 3 classes, or all 4 classes, right? But we cannot have the student passing 5 classes or more, right? Because we only have 4 trials. So in other words, the number of possible values of a binomial random variable is equal to n plus 1, right? Where n here is the number of trials in the binomial experiment. So in this video, we defined what a binomial random variable is. We explained how the binomial random variable satisfies the definition of a random variable, and then we looked at the number of possible values of a binomial random variable.